Okay, welcome guys. This is the first episode or first interview that I'm sort of doing as part of an ongoing thing with my business and personally. And I'm pretty chuffed to have an old-time friend, probably 30 plus years, Matt Whalan from Physiotherapy Physio joining me today. Matt, we've known each other for 30 odd years. Physiotherapist by trade, exercise physiologist as well. Mate, specialising pretty much in injury prevention and diving into high performance management, across a number of roles within your practice and internally and externally, local sports, state sports, international level with the Australian football teams also, mate. Firstly, mate, thanks for joining me, mate. It's really good to have you face to face.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. The concept is fantastic, so happy to be involved.
Mate, obviously we're going through a pretty difficult time across the board right now, not only from a business perspective, but also a personal one, mate. How have you found things over the past sort of, let's say, 2, 3, 4 weeks?
It's been pretty stressful. I think we're a small business of 13 staff. So we've got 4 partners, our structure is. So sort of one central sort of place. We do work out of a gym as well. So there's a few layers within that, but it's been a very, hopefully a once in a generational kind of concept that we have to deal with. So it's been a very stressful time period.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, we don't really want to go through anything like this again, do we?
Nah, I think the reality is now starting to kick in for some people, but in some ways, probably I've been a bit more focused on this for the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks, just because we were supposed to be traveling away with some sporting teams. So we've been keeping a bit of an eye on this concept over the last, since it probably started in China, to be honest. So you can just see the pattern of where it's going. And I think, I think it's going to be an interesting next couple of months anyway.
So did you get some intel on this sort of before it fully came out?
I've been watching, especially so when you see when it started in Europe, like Australia's in this really unique position where we're probably 2 or 3 weeks behind some of the countries like the UK and the US. Like the US was they had some Senate hearings about 5, 6 weeks ago where they identified that a lot of people weren't getting tested because they couldn't afford it. So we've been starting to see how bad it gets and how long it's been lasting for. So we've had a few discussions around whether tours were going to go ahead and things, and then it's all moved very, very rapidly. And unfortunately, we follow models. Well, not at the moment, but in the early days, we're starting some pretty similar models to what you see in the UK and Italy and Germany, unfortunately.
Yeah. How long do you think we're going to be in this sort of situation for, Matt?
To be honest, I think a lot will determine what happens the next month. They're picking, originally they were talking about the middle of April will be the peak number of new cases. But a lot of the problem with this is it depends on who you're testing and how much testing is being done. If you're not testing, then you don't know. And the next phase will be the community transmission phase, which is at the moment we've blocked the borders. So that's why we're seeing a drop in numbers. But then the next step will be how many have actually been transferred in the community, which was pretty much a decision based on why we shut the clinic to the public.
Yeah. And you did that before the compulsory measures came out, didn't you?
Yeah, we sort of to be honest, like the way that it's been tracking that similarly to overseas, that probably 3 weeks before we did, like we started having conversations that by the 30th of March we'll probably shut. So to the public, if unless measures were put in place by the government to change movement of people within the community, and once it became clear on the Tuesday before we shut that they weren't going to change anything, I always said once we got to 50 cases locally, we would shut, and we sort of went from 7 cases to 50 cases in a week, and then we went from last week 50 cases to 100 cases. So locally, so that to me that was especially in our industry where you've got a number of people coming through the doors in the clinic, but also very face to face, a lot of contact sort of concept. So it just creates it's a risk that I wasn't prepared to take.
Yeah. Look, and I think the current state we're in right now, and the numbers have seemed to stabilise to some extent, or the rapid, the amount of growth, all the new cases that have been identified, they're not sort of growing on a rapid cases that they were previously. I think the scariest thing is that people can get a little bit complacent with those results. And
Oh,
and I think
that's a big
now it's a real critical time now for what I believe for the next sort of couple of weeks, where when all these announcements that things are slowing, people get complacent, which can really throw things into orbit again.
This is the really scariest phase. Like, and as a to be honest, even as a business, we sit there and go, because there's clinics that aren't closed, and there's a fair chance that physio will be allowed to stay open regardless of how tight the shutdown gets. Unless we go into like a big shutdown like New Zealand have, there's a fair chance they'll keep physio clinics being allowed to be open.
Mm-hmm.
But so from a business perspective, you're not available, which is like as physios, we like to be involved and be available to our patients.
Yeah.
So that was tough for us to make that call.
Yeah.
But I think from a social, I think to me, I approach this scenario like this is massive. This is big, and it's going to be big. But it will once the government was pretty clearly showing that they weren't going to change a lot of things, then communities, like you look at some big companies like your Savvy's and Chico, like they all close the same sort of week. Like it's sort of, if you can make some sort of changes, then sometimes you got to walk the walk.
I think too, if you're sort of on the ball and you've got a bit of common sense about it, I think you have to sort of take a few steps back to go forward in the long run. Yeah.
Well, when you start having the feeling like you go, well, if a patient came into the clinic and I got if I got the virus and then I took it and saw my parents, then how would you feel? And as the risk goes up, and as scientists and whatever, we're supposed to look at, as risk change, you change your behaviour. So once we start to go, look, the numbers are increasing, so the likelihood is going to be higher. You'd struggle to justify that. And it's the same with all my staff. So if my staff got it or they transmit it to their families, once you start,
much bigger ramifications, isn't there?
Exactly.
Yeah. Matt, let's dive into from a business owner's perspective. Now, you first got into business 2005, from what my research tells me.
Good research, yes. I came across to Victory Physio from a different clinic, and I came in as a partner in 2005.
Yep.
The clinic had been there, I'm going to get this wrong, I have a feeling it's been open around 25 to 28 years. So I've been there for 15 years now. So yes, I came in at that stage, it was kind of, how many? There was sort of one full-time and a part-time sort of physio at that stage. So it was the early days.
Now, coming into business, I suppose, raw in an aspect of being an owner or a partner, what were some of the things that you were really, I suppose, fearful, or what was the big unknown for you at that point in time?
Oh, it was scary because I'd been out that long, to be honest. But the main thing is the concept that if no one walks through the door, then you can't pay people. So there's a very raw moment where you wake up and go, like, there's no guarantee. Your wage is determined on what you do. So you either it's an interesting moment when you wake up and realize that you can't. It's up to you to generate. Like, you got to pay rent and staff and stuff like that. So
it's very different. I mean, I went through the same thing. So I remember day one sitting in my office downstairs before I relocated upstairs, and sitting there, literally 0 clients to start with, and day one, and it's literally like looking at the phone.
Yeah.
You know, waiting for that first call to come through. So I think that's probably the biggest, is the initial unknown. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was very fortunate. Like I came in with 2 other partners who they were already established in the business, and they were more mature than I was. So they'd been around a lot longer, and in terms of one's still a partner today, and it's been a fantastic. We've been, from some of the horror stories you hear about partnerships, like I've been extremely fortunate that we've all balanced each other out, and I think been to the benefit of everybody within the clinic itself.
And I think you've touched on a good point there with partners. It can go really wrong if you don't have the right people partnered in your business, right?
Yeah, I think, and that you do hear some horror stories, and I think I've always come at it very. I think if you've got a really strong open communication, that's the key. Like it's almost a bit like we've always had a very clear, if we both don't agree on something, we won't do it. And if one doesn't agree, then you've really got to try and sell it to the other. And I think that's just a professional and a personal respect, really.
Yeah.
Like it's we don't live in each other's pockets. Like we don't, like it's a very professionally based. You don't have to be best mates. You just got to respect each other's
Yeah, for sure.
their input and what they add into the business.
Yeah. Now, from back to 2005 to 2020, Matt, the journey between then and now, how have you changed, or how do you see owning a business differently than what you did when you started?
That's a good question.
When
I first started,
it's a big general question, but I mean, I think as a business owner, you evolve within yourself. You evolve yourself during the journey as well.
yeah, 100%. And like I probably, when I first started, like I worked some serious hours. Like I worked lots. Like we used to do sport work plus clinic, to the point where we started to take bring new physios on, because you always had to sort of, whereas always had that thing where you almost want to be over 50% over what you need before you put someone else on. And again, there was a lot of bad reputations, and I had a bad experience as a first year graduate as well in terms of the place I worked at. So we worked a lot, and I sort of gave myself a good 10 years to do that. And then we built up and we were able to take new people on. We kind of very, one thing that hasn't, we've tried to keep it very, rather than having lots of clubs or lots of sports teams that we look after, we've still got, like we still look after Dapto Rugby League, who I looked after from the first time I started at Victory. So there's some relationship-based ones that we've kept over a long period of time. In terms of now, I've tried to really back off. I think physio itself's changed. Like when I first started, if someone sprained an ankle, or that they might come to physio 4 or 5 times a week. Now, and through lots of factors, like partly because you don't really need to. The other part too is that time's more of a driver than even cost. People just don't come to physio, or they don't seek treatment often as much, which I think, and our style of treating and managing patients has changed a lot as well. So I think from that end, that changes your model and changes, you can bring more people through, and we've changed how we've got some fantastic new physios that have come on the last couple of years. And then so I'll try and help, I hate the word mentor, but try and help just guide them, and partly to try and develop a career path concept, because probably a little bit like accounting and saying physio, like there's a ceiling to the point you go, well, is this it? Is this all I'm going to do for the rest of my career? Treat backs or whatever. So we've got some physios who are doing stuff with university, like we're just in the process of just finished my university sort of research stuff. So, and have many roles. And we really now encourage the physios to have, whether it's working with national teams, whether it's working with Sydney FC, have different interests outside of just the clinical stuff, so that it keeps you very interested in what you're doing.
It's super important. I mean, I don't have the luxury, or whether it's a good or bad thing, of having any employees. But I still, even within myself, probably over the last 3 to 4 years, I've really found, and it's the reason why I've diversified my business into a few different areas, is that you can get really complacent and even stale to an extent if you're doing the same thing every single day in, day out. So, that's the reason why I suppose you can say innovated and went in a few different directions, is not only from the income or the ability to generate through a few different sources, but even just from a personal stimulation point of view. And it's something, it's very easy as an owner, I find, and maybe like yourself too, you can really get caught up in that staleness of the day-to-day, in your line of work, treating people, seeing 12, 15 patients a day, just hitting the repeat button day in, day out.
Yeah, and I think, like, it's an interesting one as you start getting older, like as we're both hitting towards the 40. We've hit 40 now. Like,
I'm there already.
I know. I got there last week. I was 40 and unemployed. It was brilliant. So the thing that's happened from mine is that you get to a point where you're going, look, you got to, if you work, well, I still love being a physio. So like, I have no intentions of trying to retire early and things. So you've got another at least 25, 30 years you're going to work. So I've been working 15. You might as well enjoy what you're doing coming up. And that's kind of probably been a big change from our end in terms of making sure that people enjoy what they're doing, thinking more long term. So, because often when I first started as a physio, like, you're on pretty strict quotas of how many patients you have to see an hour, return on investment, like all that sort of stuff. Like, none of my physios have that. No, we don't have KPIs. I just want them. My only KPI is that, well, you can see if someone's busy or not. So they're either busy or they're not busy.
Yeah.
We've always had the thing that to get people, our job as partners is to get people to ring up and come in. So it's not their job to chase an ambulance, chase people. So it's my main thing is that they're there in 5 to 10 years time, and if they're doing that, then they'll be fine anyway.
Yeah. Touching on your employees, it's obviously a difficult and a different time that they're experiencing right now as well. How have you, as an owner, how have you sort of nurtured them through this process?
Yeah, we took a pretty I took a pretty direct route in terms of, as I said, like we tried to keep a very close eye on what was happening. I suppose I feel like I played chicken a bit with the government because having seen what was happening in the UK, everything that the government did in Australia, the UK government did sort of 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days before. So they did the soft closures, and they did a little bit of money as small business, and then they ended up going the wage subsidy. So to me, I was pretty confident that I was going to get to that point. So I didn't want to lay anyone off pretty much. So I think it's a lot of my approach to this has been, this isn't a financial downturn. It's not a global financial crisis. This is a pandemic that no matter what I did as a business owner, there's zero I could have done to avoid this. Like there's nothing. So what you don't want to do is double down on the problem so essentially we tried to act really quickly. We gave as soon as the job seeker stuff came out, we put a document together for our staff and said, look, this is a likely scenario. We're gonna have to stand down. The government's either going to shut everything down, or it's going to be a really long process. The beauty of a pandemic is it will pass. As long as everyone's safe and healthy, this will pass. So we had that phase of survival, and then we've got recovery. So at the moment, it's a survival phase until we understand all the government stuff, and then they know what we're doing. We're chasing loans, we're chasing the JobKeeper stuff. We've done all that sort of stuff on their behalf, and kept them as much information as I can, just to try and keep them informed. So it's not like and also the other part too is they can maintain, with the JobKeeper component, they can maintain their annual leave. And so we gave them options so we could pay that out, or we can. So we sort of tried to be as proactive but upfront as we possibly could, but with the view that we didn't want to make anyone redundant, because it will start back up again eventually.
Well, I think at the end of the day, business owners rely on their staff.
Exactly.
For a massive component of their business, and it's all good and well to, when you own a business, to look at your employees when things are going really well. And it's, you can take them for granted. I mean, I'm not in the position where I employ people, but when I talk to various business owners, you can see there's complacency within their staff.
Yeah.
And I think, your staff does a lot for you in respect of maintaining the integrity and the brand that you sell. But also, when it comes to times like this, I think as a leader and as a business owner, you need to step up to the party as well, and not just disregard, or not just, put them down, put the employees under the table, because essentially they're the majority of the guys that are carrying your business.
100%. And that's and even like you look at now this JobKeeper component where, as you know, like there's no guarantees of anything. Like the issue as a small business person is that there's the number of people that say to me, "Oh, you guys are right now. You got the 100 billion from the government, and you've got this, and you got that." And you go, "We've got nothing, mate. We're not getting anything till May." So now in the scenario where we've got 11 staff that are going to go on the JobKeeper program, that we've got to fund for a month before potentially any money comes back in, which again and this is where I think the whole, from a community perspective, is everybody's going to suffer with this thing. So we'll get loans and we'll do all that sort of stuff to make sure we can do it. And we do have the capacity to carry that as 11 staff for that, which is fine. But again, I think that openness about, and it's definitely not to go, "Oh, we're doing this for you." It's just more to go, look, in some ways it's an opportunity to show your appreciation for your staff as well. Because the easy thing is just go, "Look, sorry, we just don't have it." Especially we've got some really bit of newer staff, but the staff and my staff have been fantastic. Like the work last week, because we're not necessarily shut for business, we're just shut from public access. So there's been a lot of stuff, project work, that they've been phenomenal. Just we've tried to let them drive that, and yeah, it's been really encouraging to see the reaction from most of it, or from all of it.
But I think the reaction of your employees will reflect the type of relationship and the communication channels that you as a business owner have with your staff on a regular basis, not just now in these times now. I think that's and I think what you've done and what you're doing is a credit to yourself and the partners there at Figgy Physio, because you know, it's very easy, like I said, for a business owner to really lose the plot under these circumstances and only be so one-dimensional and have one train of thought and be really selfish at this point in time too.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, I think the other issue we've got is like I call it the death by 1,000 cuts. So you've got this scenario where like on my phone, there's a message that says stay home, and we're a face-to-face business. So like it's you're in a scenario where we could stay open and you can burn your wages bill and you can do all that sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's not going anywhere fast, and that cash we will need later when we start back up. So
I think it's a massive survival mode for everyone, I think, right now.
Exactly. Survival is the best word for it. Like the government keeps talking about recovery, but don't worry about recovery yet. We just gotta let's see, get over the next couple of months and then see where we go.
We'll move on a little bit. I'm probably a bit of a believer that things happen for a reason, and I think the pandemic that we're going through at the moment, especially for business owners, and it could be everyone in general speaking, is that it's possibly a good resetting period, or even a period of for business people, a good time to innovate, or a good time to really have a look at what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis with your business, and from a good perspective and from a negative perspective. And I believe that during this time, it's given business owners a really, really good opportunity to actually do a full top to bottom review of their business, and to even innovate and to come up with different methods of doing what they do. Do you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we often don't get time, and that's the time is the big factor. So now I've got more time than I know what to do and stuff. But we sort of I think the key thing that we see now is that you can work on the projects. There's a lot of Zoom meetings, and I've had more. We can do little presentations, and in the sports medicine world and sports science world in particular, we start to see some quite innovative steps. So there was a conference last week that everything was online and freely accessible. That's a conference that would normally cost $1,000. You have to fly to England, and so there's the innovation that's going to come out of this is massive. In terms of it's interesting in the physio space because there's this massive telehealth push. So where you do consults via Zoom like we are now.
Yeah.
And now that's been funded a little bit by Medicare, but still you got to see your GP, and then private health covers coming out and doing the same thing, but you still got to go via your GP. So there are some businesses that I know are trying to pivot their whole business towards telehealth, and we're pretty much going to block this in sort of this whole period into 2-week block. So the next 2 weeks is let's just see how things work and how things get up to speed, and just because at the end of the day you still want to have a decent product, if you want to, for a better word.
Yeah. And
I think the other part too is we'll know how long this is going to go for. So from my end, if we're looking at a 4 to 6 week, at the moment we're shut for 4 weeks to the public, and then if the curve keeps flattening and everything goes nicely, we'll probably reopen in the start of May. So from my end at the moment, if people have questions, I'd rather them just go, look, just shoot me an email and we'll have a chat, and we might not charge people because we just put it as a pause. So I think that the innovation component will go with time. There's some great resources we're looking at the moment, like in putting together some online video exercise programs, which was sort of all our Pilates class, exercise classes. We've all sent those out to people so that they can continue with their work. So again, it gives people time to change what they do in terms of pulling together those exercise programs. We now have time to video exercises that we're now going to create a bit of a library. Yeah. So at the moment, probably our main rule with anything that we put on, that we take on at the moment is, will we use this after this process? So if it doesn't value, if it's a short-term thing, then that's okay, but we've got to acknowledge it's a short-term thing. If it's something that, this is going to be really useful when we go back to normal, then I have no problems in that. And that can be from an investment point of view, but also from just a time. Well, time is investment, I guess. So,
I think it's a great.
That's kind of our main rule.
it's a great opportunity, especially with the digital space. That once this does blow over, it's going to add another dimension to people's businesses which weren't there now.
And I think it changes the culture. So previously, patients would never contact you via Zoom, or you'd feel like you weren't. I think like I look at it with my kids with school, like there's no chance you'd ever think that kids would do like a Zoom meeting with their class. Whereas now, Google Classroom, it'll change people's culture of what they find acceptable in the workplace. So to have a Zoom staff meeting before, you would have like no one's going to do that, but now it's just commonplace. So I think that'll be one big change out of this whole process, that people are more open to conferencing, communicating over the net, and also we need to look at how we can add value into that space, because it is something that we can look at down the track with people overseas, and it becomes a way that you could expand what you do on a broader setting if you can get your product good. I think that's the way for it.
That's right. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Mate, I'm going to flip a little bit. I mean, obviously, as a business owner, you'd rather be on a proactive side rather than a reactive side. Into your line of work now, it's very rare, I suppose, and this is where you've evolved within yourself and your business. Generally, as you said before, the physio was generally someone would come to for treatment. All right. A lot of your work and research and what you do is now engulfed around injury prevention. So how, in this current, now with the change of circumstance, people are doing a lot more work from home. What are some things that people have come to you now, whether it's, it might be injury with themselves, sitting behind a desk, being in different circumstances, not as much exercise as they were doing before. What are some things that people have come to you with in the last sort of month or so?
So there's two ways probably frame that, I guess. So you've got one, which is like the general population, we call, like, so people now they're going to be sitting at home more, sitting at desks. They might have had a great ergonomic setup at work that now when they go home, they're at the kitchen table. So a lot of it's around, and the other part too, I think, for people is sifting through, like there's a volume of stuff on the internet at the moment. Everyone's trying to stay current. Content's coming out left, right, and center. So we've had these discussions around, look, do we put out an exercise a day for people? Which we thought is probably not the way to go, just because it's there's so many different people competing for that space. So we developed just a basic desk mobility program, which people can, which is now we've pushed through our social media sort of components, and it's just a 2-minute video of like some basic stuff that people can do 3 or 4 times a day. So it's that's then from our end, that's our content given out to people, because it's again that thing of, well, we always tried to look after our patients as like whatever we can, and we've now got patients to bring their kids in to see us, all that sort of stuff. So to me, getting that information out, so mainly around posture component, and then we've got people obviously exercising at home. So we use a program called Telehab, where we can send out exercise programs to people, which is at the moment we don't charge anyone for that. And it's more, and then our sporting team commitments, everyone's in a bit of purgatory with those because we don't know where we're up to. So we do some work with the Wollongong Wolves, Sydney FC, Football South Coast teams as well from a community basis. So what we've done with that is tried to develop some basic programs that people can do by themselves down the oval, or in their house. So there's a lot of our work has been gathering where the free resources are for people, because cost is always an issue. But at the same time also, if we don't have it, we'll take videos and put links up. So that's been a good process over the last couple of weeks, and we've just redone the next phase with our running stuff, because we want people to be able to progress as it goes along.
Yeah. Do you think, looking from the sporting landscape now, do you think the pause that we're having with the season is, in a nutshell, is this year a write-off?
It's a good question. I think that the tricky bit is going to be what will have to be the case for us to restart. So the big problem with this virus is not necessarily like the virus is, if you get it, it can be quite bad for those 20% that react poorly. But the main thing we want to do is make sure that everyone doesn't get it at once. So in terms of a write-off, I think there'll be some innovation around within so if you look at, say, community-based things like Football South Coast, Football New South Wales, FFA, clubs, none of those key stakeholders do not want to not, and players, they don't want to not see a ball kick. So I'd love to see number one, you could go to a summer competition. Number two, there could be a condensed 10-week period where you play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, which obviously has load implications for players. But at the same time, it almost has that fundamental question of, well, why do we play? Is it to win a trophy? Is it because everyone loves it? And I think there's going to be some interesting. You could be innovative and go, all right, you play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, but rather than the first grade 23s and youth, you're just going to have 2 squads. You have 6 substitutes. You could make it quite interesting and just let people play ready for next season.
Yeah. It's going to be more just about, again, getting people back on the field at the right time during the year, just giving them the outlet of playing sport again, really, rather than any other motive.
And that's, I think, and this is where my biggest concern, and I've never been a very politically active individual, especially even on social media, but I think a lot will depend on what happens in the next 2 months. If things don't go well in the community, then number one, we're going to need an outlet of some description, and if you watch what's happening in the US at the moment, they're talking some big numbers of people that are no longer with us. So I hope for that nothing happens here, but this isn't a continental specific virus. It affects everybody. So I think that the key will be what happens in the next couple of weeks. If it all goes really well, we might get started really early. Yeah. You've got rugby league talking about July or something like that, kicking back off. But then you've got community-based stuff where the hardest thing, it won't be a medical decision to start back and play, because realistically, there's not really a medical reason to stop. There's more the politics of having people around it and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a really interesting social question once we get to that point of when you go back and play.
Yeah. All right, Matt, in wrapping up, mate, again, I appreciate your time today. From a business owner, back to a business owner perspective, all right? We'll finish on a final question. I always want to wrap up with a question, okay? In all your experience, what's the best piece of advice you can give someone who's starting a new business today?
Ooh. I'll give. There was a book I was given, and it was a great book. It was a book called No One Ever Went Broke Making a Profit. It's by a guy called Chuck Kaiser, and he owned Ugg boots. Anyway, it wasn't necessarily about how to generate income or anything like that, but it was essentially around. There's just he was an accountant in the States. He bought Ugg boots, and he gave some really good anecdotes of some high class, big law firms that borrowed against potential profits and all that sort of stuff. So just some basic common sense stuff about things like a transaction's a profit. It's there's things like a transaction's a gift until your money's received. So there's lots of things we get people all the time that will come and go, look, I forgot my whatever, I'll pay next time. But if you use the same analogy when you go to Woolworths, you can't walk out with 2 litres of milk and say I'll pay next time. So I've known lots of physio clinics that have run on 60 grand of outstanding debts. So you go, yeah, well, that's coming, but it's not there. But from a general perspective of keeping yourself sane, is the ones that I like is the cemetery is full of people who thought they were indispensable, and the other one is make sure you hire people smarter than you. So we've always tried to have that concept that it's not about you. It has to be about the business, and then if you make it about you, it's never in the best interest of the business. So that keeps you, if you keep that sort of that grounding level there, then it sort of helps when you're bringing people on, and helps you self-reflect a bit in terms of, because it's easy when you're the boss, no one really disagrees with you. So that can be good, but a lot of the times it's not a very positive thing. You need people around you that will tell you when you're being an idiot, or you're being a bastard. So I think it's important.
Yeah, good one, Matt. All right, Mate, for anyone who doesn't know who you are before this video, where can people find you on your platforms?
So I'm on Twitter because I'm old. So there's Victory Physio on Twitter. There's Instagram, which is sort of, that's a new one for me, but we've got people that use that, and then there's we use Facebook, and then you can always get us on our website, victoryphysio.com.au, and then we're always contactable on email, info@victoryphysio.com.au, or matt@victoryphysio.com.au is fine.
All right. Well, I'll drop your website address and everything in the comments once we post this live, mate. Mate, thanks again. You're a good man, and we're only our businesses are only a couple hundred meters away. So if you need me, mate, just throw a rock at my window.
No worries. You're doing a good job, mate.
All right. Good on you, Matt. Thanks heaps, buddy.
No worries, buddy.